Hi, it's Sylvester, and I wanted to review this book, The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. I was given this book by my stepmom for my birthday, and if my stepmom happens to be watching, hi, I love you, thank you for the book, but I am going to be critical of this book, so I don't mean to be insulting. I'm not trying to say that it was a bad present and that I don't appreciate it. I do appreciate it. I am thankful to have a stepmom like you. You're fantastic, and I love you very much. And you might not want to watch this video because, again, you seem to really, really like this book, and I have some critical things to say about it. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm really not. I just wanted to talk about this book because I have some thoughts and I have some feelings. Now, in my defense, I did bring this up when I was with my stepmom and my dad at one point. We were having dinner together and I brought up the book, and my dad was also critical of it. So, and my stepmom didn't seem to be that hurt by that. So, again, hopefully she's not going to take this video personally. It's not a personal attack, I promise. I'm not saying, if my stepmom's watching this, I'm not saying that she has bad taste, and I'm not saying that it's that the book has no merit, because I remember back in high school, I heard a lot about The Secret. People wouldn't stop talking about The Secret. People said that this book changed their life, and some people say that this book saved their life, and I'm not trying to say that that's invalid. Different strokes for different folks. Some things really, really mean a lot to certain people and don't mean that much to other people. So if this book means a lot to you and this book saved your life or changed your life, I am not saying there's anything wrong with you, and I'm not saying that that's not valid. I am just saying that I personally have some criticisms of this book and the message it preaches. So if you've never read The Secret, it is basically about the law of manifestation. It's about positive thinking and having a positive mindset. And basically what the book says, if I had to sum up this book in one sentence, it would be, you could have anything or do anything just by thinking about it really, really hard and wanting it really, really badly. Basically, there's a technique to The Secret. You're supposed to, instead of wanting something, you're supposed to imagine that you already have it and be grateful for it. So if I wanted $1 million, instead of sitting here thinking, I'm going to get $1 million, I really want $1 million, instead, I should live my life as though I already have the $1 million and as though I'm grateful for having it and appreciative for having that $1 million. It's like the mindset of abundance, where if you spend all your time thinking about how you don't have something or thinking about how you wish you had something, then your thoughts are essentially pushing that thing away from you. But if you attract something to you with your thoughts, you can have anything that your heart desires. You just have to believe it hard enough and put those positive thoughts into the universe and believe that you already have the thing that you want, that it's already yours. And by thinking that, the universe will give it to you. And it's talking about how your thoughts can physically affect the world around you. And I appreciate the idea behind that. I appreciate the idea of being positive, being optimistic. I understand that thinking about the things you don't have and being sad about the fact that you don't have certain things is not the healthiest way to live, because you should instead focus on the stuff that's good in your life, and you should focus on the stuff that you do have and be appreciative and grateful. And that's a much better use of your time and your mental energy than sitting around just feeling sorry for yourself because of the stuff you don't have and because of what the things that aren't good in your life. I do appreciate that positive thinking is actually a good thing. And I'm not saying that you should be negative. I'm not saying that optimism is bad. And I'm not even saying that I don't believe in the law of attraction or the law of manifestation. I do believe that we can potentially manifest things by putting it out into the world. I do believe that that there is some merit to that. Like, I'm a spiritual person. I'm not necessarily a religious person, but I am a somewhat spiritual person, and I do believe in manifestation. I do believe that it is possible to change the world around you with your thoughts to a certain degree, but the way this book talks about it is very, very, very pseudoscience-y. When I was talking about this book with my dad and my stepmom, my dad, I was talking about manifesting things and how there is something to be said about, thinking things into existence. And my dad essentially said, you can't just think things into existence. You also have to put work and effort into it. You also have to, take steps to get the thing that you want. For example, I want help with my mental illnesses. If I just sit around and think real hard about how I want help with my mental illnesses, that's not really going to achieve anything. I have to actually put the work in. I have to see my doctor and see my psychiatrist and see my therapist, and I have to actually put effort into my goal of making my mental health better. Just sitting around and wanting it real bad and thinking about it real bad isn't going to cure my mental health problems or fix my mental health problems or even make them better. And the way this book talks about it does feel very, again, it's very pseudoscience-y, and it feels like kind of insulting in a lot of ways. Like, people who have problems only have those problems because because they have the wrong mindset. If something bad happens to somebody, it's just, the book blames them. It's because they aren't thinking the correct way. It's because their thoughts are causing those problems in their life. And that's simply not true. Having a positive mindset and believing real hard that I don't have mental illnesses isn't going to cure my mental illnesses, because that's simply not how it works. And where this book really kind of pissed me off, honestly, is when it started talking about cancer and physical illnesses, because it essentially says that you can think cancer away, which is so harmful. Most of this book is pretty, again, it's very pseudoscience-y, it's very corny in a lot of ways, but I could see how it can be helpful for people, and I can see how, I could see how people would like this book until it comes to the parts about cancer, because I am certain that there are people in the world who read this book, had their life changed by it, got cancer, and then refused chemotherapy and radiation and treatment because they thought that they could use The Secret to get rid of their cancer, that they didn't need traditional treatment for their cancer because the book The Secret tells you that you can think your cancer away. That people have probably died because of this book. And that is where I feel like this book is legitimately actually kind of harmful. And like I said, it does blame people in a way for their problems. The reason I'm not a millionaire is because I don't know how to think properly. It's because I'm too negative. It's because I don't live my life as though I'm a millionaire. The reason I have mental illnesses is because I don't know how to think properly. The reasons you know what I mean? The reason somebody has cancer is because they don't know how to use The Secret. It's not, it blames people for their problems and tells them that their problems can be fixed with thought and thought alone. Now, thoughts are powerful. We are our thoughts. what happens in our brain, like, our brains are us. And so if our thoughts are nothing but negative, and if our thoughts are nothing but self-pity and why me, and, it's just being sad about the stuff we don't have and being sad about all of the stuff that is wrong with our lives, then that is going to lead to a miserable existence. But there is such a thing as dangerous optimism, being so positive and so optimistic that you are not realistic. Like, people, I've been accused of being a pessimist before, and I like to think that I'm actually kind of an optimistic person. But for the most part, I try to be a realist, because I want to have realistic expectations for myself and the world around me. I can't think Trump out of existence by just wanting it real bad and living my life as though Trump doesn't exist. Trump's going to continue existing and doing Trump things. You know what I mean? Like, war and famine and poverty. You're telling me that these things could be fixed if somebody just thought real hard about it? You're telling me that the person, the unhoused person on the corner is only unhoused and starving because they're not positive enough, because they don't know how to attract things to them with their mind. Like, it's very insulting to me. And so I do have a lot of issues with this book. I really do. And I appreciate, again, that this book means a lot to a lot of people, including my stepmom, and I'm not saying that I look down on my stepmom for liking this book. I think that the logic is inherently a little bit flawed. It kind of reminds me of, there's this sketch by Shane Dawson, and I'm going to spoil it, so if you haven't seen it, sorry, but there's this one sketch by Shane Dawson where his mom becomes absolutely convinced that she's going to win the lottery. I don't remember if it's like she has like a prophecy, or if it comes to her in a dream. I'm not really sure. I don't really remember. It's been a while since I've seen this sketch, but she becomes absolutely convinced that she's going to win the lottery, and her family are going to be wealthy. And Shane came from a very poor family, and this sketch is based off of a real thing that happened in his life, and the whole sketch is them thinking about how awesome things are going to be once they win the lottery. And again, spoiler alert, the mom does not end up winning the lottery, and it's this massive, sad thing. It's this really sad moment when they realize that they'd been mentally preparing themselves for a future that's not going to happen. Like, if The Secret was real, that mom, Shane Dawson's mom, would have won the lottery that day, because she was convinced. She believed it. She believed it in her heart. And if it is really as simple as thinking positive things into your life, she would have thought winning the lottery into her life that day. But unfortunately, that's not how the world works. Your thoughts don't have that much power on the world and that much influence on the world around you. Your thoughts do influence your life. Again, you are your thoughts. And so if your thoughts are constantly negative and constantly full of self-pity and whatnot, then you are bringing yourself misery. And there is a lot to be said about having a positive mindset. There's a lot to be said about being optimistic. There's a lot to be said about, thinking positive thoughts. But it kind of reminds me of the OCD concept of magical thinking. Let me Google the specific definition of this so that I don't get it wrong. Okay, according to Google's AI overview, magical thinking is the belief that one's thoughts, wishes, or actions can directly influence or cause events in the real world, even when there's no logical or causal connection. So, for example, if you have OCD, your brain convinces you that your thoughts have a lot more power than they actually do. For example, if you don't jiggle the doorknob 7 times, exactly 7 times, every time you go in and out of a door, if you don't jiggle the doorknob 7 times, something bad's going to happen. Someone you love's going to get sick, or you're going to get injured, or, a natural disaster is going to happen. Your brain convinces you that there's some kind of connection between jiggling the doorknob and something happening in the real world. Even though you logically understand that that's not how it works, you're scared enough. The OCD causes enough anxiety in you that you jiggle the doorknob because you want to be safe and you don't want to risk something bad happening. And then the one time you don't jiggle the doorknob happens to be the day that you break your ankle. And then it reinforces the idea that you brought that on yourself because you're you know what I mean? It's just to me, like that's kind of what The Secret sounds like to me. It's encouraging people, like if somebody with OCD, if somebody with OCD magical thinking were to read The Secret and really, really believe in it, then this could potentially make their OCD worse because it's telling them that their thoughts are actually bringing real change into the world. Like I remember when I was a kid, I would lay in bed at night and I would think like something, like maybe I got into a fight with my mom that day and I was still mad at her, and I'd be lying in bed and I would think, I hate my mom. And then I was scared that those thoughts were somehow real, and that me thinking I hate my mom was then going to cause something bad to happen to my mom. And so I would lay in bed and think, I'm sorry I thought that, I'm sorry I thought that, I'm so sorry I thought that, and I would just apologize over and over and over again in my head. Or if I thought, things that were mean, or if I thought things that were, like if I was like, I'm scared that this thing might happen. If I was having a random anxiety that there might be a tornado, then I would be convinced that by thinking about it, I was causing a tornado to happen. And so again, I would lay in bed and think, I'm so sorry I thought that. I'm so sorry I thought that. Then I was just like constantly censoring my own thoughts because I genuinely believed that my thoughts could alter the world around me. And this is also something that you find in people who are experiencing delusions or psychosis, is that they believe their thoughts have a lot more power and impact on the world around them than they actually do. And so if somebody severely mentally ill were to read The Secret, or somebody with a lot of anxiety, like when I was a kid, were to read The Secret, like it could honestly really negatively affect somebody's life. Like if I read this book when I was a kid, it would have just reinforced those thoughts that I was already having, that my thoughts were bringing things into reality. And, and it would have just made it worse. This idea that every time I thought a quote unquote bad thought, I would have to repeatedly apologize over and over and over again in my head because I really thought that my thoughts were a lot more powerful than they actually were. And so again, reading this book would have just made that worse, and it would have just made my anxiety worse. And then I would have tried thinking really positively and trying to think things into my life, and it inevitably would not have worked because, again, this is pseudoscience. And the book tries really hard to convince you that this is based in actual science. That's another reason why this is kind of concerning to me and potentially dangerous, because they get a lot of quote-unquote professionals. They really, really try to make it seem like The Secret is based in science and fact, cold, hard fact. And so, like, if I was a kid and I read this, and I would have just wanted something real bad and thought about having it and used The Secret to try to manifest it, and it didn't work, then I would blame myself. I would be mad at myself because I would think clearly I'm doing it wrong. Clearly there's something wrong with me, because the book really makes it seem like if it doesn't work, you're just not doing it right. And again, it feels very blamey. Like if your life isn't as good as you want it to be, it is because you haven't tried hard enough. It's because you are just not doing the secret right. And it really does bother me. At the end of the day, it really does bother me. And I think that's pretty much all I had to say about this. There is one more thing that I had to say about this, actually, which is that it kind of reminds me of another anecdote from when I was a child. How I thought praying for things, if you pray for something really hard, then it will happen. I really thought that that's how it worked. I was not raised particularly religiously, and I understand that prayer is not a guarantee, but as a kid, that's kind of how I interpreted it, where it's like if I ask God for something, and if I want it real bad, and I ask him really, really nicely for it, then he'll give it to me. And so I would pray, and I would pray, and I would pray, and then nothing would ever come of it. And it just made me really, really frustrated, and it made me kind of hate God sometimes, because I was like, I was promised that this would work. I was promised that if you pray for something, then you'll get it. And again, I understand that that's not how prayer actually works. I understand that prayer is more or less just a request, and that you don't always get the things you pray for, but as a kid, that's not how I understood prayer to be, and so it just really frustrated me and made me feel worse about not having the things that I wanted, because because I thought I was guaranteed to get it if I just did this one simple thing, or I blame myself and be like, clearly I'm not doing it right. Maybe I'm not believing hard enough in God. I'm not a good enough Christian. I'm not a good enough person. There's something wrong with me. That's why God's not answering my prayers. And again, that's really what this feels like. In fact, I find it hard to, I don't even want to call it pseudoscience, because it's like not science in any way. It's just like to me it feels like religion more than science, because that is essentially what it is. It's like have faith in the secret, pray to the God of the secret, and you will get what you want. And so to me, this feels kind of cultish, and the way people talk about this book feels very cultish. The people who like this book almost do talk about it as though it's a religion, and I find that dangerous and kind of scary, how much faith people put in this book, and Anyway, sorry, I'm just repeating everything I've said already at this point. I've said everything I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Stay frosty. Bye.